We return now to our top story, Russia's hybrid threats and NATO's proposed drone wall. And joining me for more is Daniel Fried, former US ambassador to Poland. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, he says Russia has ill intentions towards the whole world. Is he right?
Well, Vladimir Putin seems to be lashing out against the West and attempting to restore the Russian Empire. Recently, the drone attacks against Poland, sabotage against Europe in general, and the overflight of Estonia suggests that Trump is trying to intimidate Europe and search for weak points. This has generated a reaction from the Europeans and maybe from the Trump administration. I think Putin's arrogance could be a problem for him because so far the Europeans are not acting cowed.
Tell me then, what should we read into these airspace violations, these drone incursions in recent weeks, on top of, as you mentioned quite rightly there, the alleged sabotage incidents backed by Russia? I mean, is Moscow already at war with the West?
I wouldn't say that Russia is at war with the West. I think they are hostile and they are engaged in probing for political weakness and probing maybe for military weakness as well. Some pro-Moscow commentators in the West have suggested that the Russians intend to warn the West against any kind of reassurance force. That's possible, but it also suggests that Russia intends still to conquer Ukraine and to intimidate the West into allowing this to happen. I don't think the West, at least not the Europeans, will permit this.
On the back of these incursions into airspace, we're now seeing NATO act, rolling out the likes of the Eastern Sentry mission, standing up this drone wall. But in your view, the fact that this is all happening after Russia's incursion, does that tell us that the alliance has been a little bit asleep at the wheel as to what Russia is capable of on the eastern flank?
I think that Europeans have had to wake up to the fact that Russia really is a threat to their security. But I think that this process of realizing that Russia is not merely misunderstood, it is hostile, is, if not complete, I think it is past a turning point. I think the Germans now have abandoned their previous hopes for endless accommodation of Russia. I think that NATO's response to the drone incursion against Poland was actually adequate. That is, it wasn't simply Polish fighters in the air, it was also Italian AWACS, German Patriots, and Dutch fighters. So I think that the NATO response has been all right. I think that NATO needs to step up its air patrols, and I also think it should consider quite seriously defending forward inside Ukraine, that is, in Ukrainian airspace. If Russia is going to use drones to cross Ukraine and move into Poland, there is no reason that NATO needs to wait for the incursion to take place. It can defend forward from inside Ukraine.
Now, Russia's threats, of course, not just from the air, but its circle of influence is also entrenched across the region. Briefly on Moldova, while I have you, we've had a story in the programme, of course, Moldova going to the polls on Sunday and facing up to these vast allegations of Russian interference, disinformation. We've had some news breaking tonight that one of the pro-Russian parties has been removed from the vote. How crucial are these ballots through Central and Eastern Europe, not just for, say, Moldova, but for European security as a whole?
This isn't a new story. We know perfectly well that Russia has attempted to interfere in European elections, both EU member states and countries like Moldova that are outside the EU. Russia wants its empire back. This is not a hard one to figure out. And Poles need no American to tell them this. They already know. Russia wants the empire back. They will employ a variety of tactics to get it back, including election interference, threats, intimidations, sabotage, has turned out an even war in the case of Georgia and Ukraine. Putin is serious. We must take him seriously. Our response needs to be strong and sustained. We need to push back on Russian attempts at aggression of all kinds against its European neighbors. And we need to increase the pressure on Russia, both economically, politically, and even militarily, in the sense of arming Ukraine, so that Putin realizes he'd better make a settlement rather than keep pushing.
Now, in July, Donald Trump announced weapons for Ukraine through NATO and that 50-day sanctions deadline for Putin. You wrote in Time magazine at the time, Putin's arrogance in wanting total Ukrainian surrender could prove his downfall if only Trump sticks to his position. What do you make of his comments this week that Kyiv could completely take back lost land? Is his position changing here? And is he, in fact, as some say, shifting responsibility and blame for Ukraine on European shoulders?
Well, there are two contradictory interpretations of Trump's words out there. One is that Trump is very forward-leaning and that these strong words may be a prelude to strong policy. I hope so. But there is the alternative view that behind Trump's more optimistic assessment of the battlefield is an attempt to back the United States out of support for Ukraine and force Europeans to take even more responsibility for the problem. I suspect what is happening is that the Trump administration is badly divided, with different circles arguing in different directions. I think some in the Trump administration, perhaps Marco Rubio, certainly General Kellogg, are pushing for support of Ukraine on kind of Reaganite grounds. Others are arguing for a U.S. withdrawal from Ukraine and even a lowering of commitment to Europe for reasons both neo-isolationist or Asia first. I think we will discover that within the Trump administration, there were competing and mutually antagonistic factions making different arguments. In this context, I think the Polish role is important. Poland has standing in Trump world. Poland in general and President Nawrocki in particular. Of course, Foreign Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Radek Sikorski knows the Americans well. He's also a person of the right. He has great knowledge of the American scene. So between President Nawrocki and Deputy Prime Minister Sikorski, both the presidency and the government in Poland are well poised to work with the Trump administration and work with Trump world. And I hope that they do so. I thought that Sikorski and Nawrocki were speaking more or less the same language in New York this past week. That's a good sign. But this struggle within the Trump administration, whether to support Ukraine or not, or if so, how much, is something that is of great concern to Poland, and Poland can play a constructive role, and I think is.
So you're saying Poland could be a game changer in ensuring that President Trump does not give up on Ukraine?
Well, I don't want to put too much of the responsibility on Poland's shoulders. Game changer is awfully strong, but Poland can have influence. Poland is spending serious money on defense. Poland is seen as a conservative society. The Polish president is supported by MAGA World and by President Trump. So Poland's word carries some weight, and I think that this is an opportunity for Poland to act in a way that is helpful to the cause of the free world generally.
Now, we're running out of time, but a brief last question. I spoke to NATO's former chief spokesperson, Oana Lungescu, a few weeks ago, and she agreed that the alliance has been facing its moment of truth. Are we in a world where we're getting closer to some kind of an Article 5, where NATO, including Washington, will need to respond with force or risk looking toothless?
I think this possibility is real. I think that NATO's leadership is perfectly well aware of this. The signals from the Trump administration are mixed, but much better than they were, let's say, 6 months ago. I think that if we show sufficient resolve now, Putin will back off. But the burden is on us to show resolve to his continued provocations.
Daniel Fried, former US ambassador to Poland. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all for World News tonight. But don't go anywhere. Face to Face with Michał Broniatowski and Adam Yasser is next. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.